Look upon all your works. No power in heaven or earth can stand against us. We are the masters of the world.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a cinematic, honestly terrifying historical account of two ancient, super powerful civilizations. These were empires that rose from the ashes of the Great Flood, only to be completely wiped out by their own staggering arrogance. We're going to dive deep into a story about the psychology of power, unbelievable hubris, and ultimately, the sheer fragility of human empires.
So, what exactly happens when the most powerful beings on Earth decide to challenge the sky? That profound question is really the anchor for our explainer today. We're going to explore how immense physical strength and, honestly, unprecedented technological mastery completely blinded these ancient societies to their ultimate vulnerability. You know, when you have absolutely no rivals on Earth, it becomes dangerously easy to forget that you aren't the one actually in control.
Let's kick things off with Chapter 1, After the Great Flood.
Picture a totally pure post-flood world. Humanity is essentially restarting with a completely clean slate of monotheism. But notice how history maps out this really slow descent back into darkness. The source material explains that Satan didn't just come out and demand idol worship immediately. That would have been rejected on the spot. Instead, it was a slow psychological manipulation. He simply suggested building commemorative statues out of respect for righteous deceased leaders. It seemed like an innocent tribute, right? But as generations passed, that original context was totally lost, and those statues slowly transformed into deities. And that perfectly sets the stage for our first great empire.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, Ad, the Giants of the Earth.
Now, the Ad settled in a place called Al-Akaf, which back then was this incredibly lush, river-filled paradise. But the crucial point here is their physical reality. We are not just talking about tall people. They were literally walking towers of muscle. The texts describe them as being up to 6 meters tall. Think about that for a second. That is roughly the height of a 2-story building. They had the brute strength to just uproot massive trees with their bare hands. They built towering pillars and carved palaces into mountains purely for entertainment, genuinely believing they would live forever. And this incredible physical supremacy? Well, it resulted in a deeply diseased psychological state.
Because when these people looked in the mirror, they basically saw gods. Their absolute security and unmatched power completely erased their memory of any higher authority. Their motto was simple and incredibly arrogant. Who is mightier than us in strength? They became utterly brutal, oppressing any other tribe they encountered without a single ounce of mercy. Right against this backdrop of absolute tyranny, a man named Prophet Hood steps forward. He was a noble guy from their very own tribe, someone they actually knew to be honest and true. And he comes to them with this simple, desperately clear plea. He didn't threaten them with violence. He appealed to their intellect, reminding them that their immense strength was just a borrowed gift. But instead of listening, the elites just aggressively mocked him. They clung to the blind traditions of their forefathers and basically dared Hood to bring about this punishment he kept warning them about.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, The Devastating Wind.
So the universe responds, right? But actually, not with some sudden lightning strike. It starts with a slow, agonizing drought. The giants literally begin to starve. Then, one day, this massive black cloud appears on the horizon. The Ad are celebrating, mistaking it for rain. But no, it was the Sarsar, a continuous, deafening, freezing cyclone. This wind was so unbelievably powerful it was plucking these 2-story-tall giants into the air like they were feathers and smashing them into the rock. After 7 nights and 8 days of this, the invincible Ad were reduced to scattered corpses, left looking like hollowed-out palm trunks.
Chapter 4. Thamud carves the mountains.
As the dust finally settles, the Thamud tribe emerges as the direct heirs to the Ad, and they settle in the rugged mountains of northwest Arabia. This right here perfectly illustrates a brilliant yet tragic repeating cycle of history, where Ad built upwards with giant pillars, Thamud carved inwards, engineering these intricate palaces deep inside solid rock. They thought, hey, we can outsmart the fate of our ancestors. But despite literally witnessing history, Thamud fell into the exact same trap of corrupt elites and idol worship.
Next is Chapter 5, The Miracle and the Crime.
Just like before, a messenger steps up, Prophet Saleh, and the elites, well,
Just to publicly humiliate him, they point to a totally smooth, lifeless rock and demand an absolutely impossible miracle. They want a 10-month pregnant she-camel to step right out of it. Salih prays, the rock shudders, and incredibly, the exact camel they asked for walks right out. But this divine sign came with a strict test. The tribe had to share their well water with her on alternating days. Imagine the logistics here. On her day, she drank the entire town's water supply. But in return, she miraculously provided enough milk to feed the entire civilization. It was a perfect, sustainable system if they could just follow the rules.
But of course, they couldn't. You see that number, 9? That represents the 9 corrupt ringleaders of the city. The camel was a walking, breathing reminder that Salih was right and they were wrong, and the elites absolutely hated it. The source material actually notes that this plot was spurred on by 2 wealthy elite women who felt their social dominance was threatened. They offered up their wealth and even themselves to anyone who would finally rid them of the camel.
In a really brutal, premeditated act of defiance, 2 conspirators named Muzda and Kedar ambush this gentle camel. Kedar strikes her with his sword, hamstringing her, and then fully slaughters her while the rest of the town just silently approves. The camel's terrified young calf actually watched its mother die, fled up the mountain, cried out 3 times to the sky, and according to the text, vanished right back into the rock. They hadn't just killed an animal, they had quite literally assassinated a divine miracle.
This triggers Chapter 6, 3 Days of Terror.
Following this horrific crime, Salih gives them a bone-chilling ultimatum. They had exactly 3 days left. This is where the psychological horror really builds. On Thursday, they wake up and every single face in the city has turned a sickly pale yellow. On Friday, their faces violently flush a dark, congested blood red, and by Saturday, every single face turns pitch black, like burnt charcoal. Imagine the suffocating panic they must have felt. Every single time they looked at each other, their own changing faces proved that their destruction was totally locked in.
Then Sunday morning hits, and the end finally arrives. But instead of an earthquake or a fire, destruction came as a single, supersonic, cosmic sound from the sky, the Seha. It was a noise so phenomenally loud and devastating that it instantly ruptured their hearts right inside their chests and froze them dead on their knees right inside those impenetrable mountain fortresses. The very mountains they had carved for protection became their silent tombs in a fraction of a second.
And finally, we look at the echoes in the ruins. Today, the silent, eerie ruins of these mountain fortresses still stand in a place called Madain Saleh. There's actually a really fascinating historical footnote here. Centuries later, Prophet Muhammad and his army were passing by this area. When his men started marveling at the incredible architecture, he immediately stopped them. He ordered them to only pass through weeping, teaching them to treat this site as a graveyard of human hubris. Definitely not some tourist attraction to be casually admired.
These lessons are absolutely crucial for us to take away today. I mean, this isn't just ancient mythology. It is a mirror reflecting our own modern world. First off, material power and technology, they are incredibly fragile against the forces of nature. Second, having earthly blessings like wealth, security, success is very often a test of character, not some divine endorsement of your behavior. Third, blindly following the traditions of our ancestors completely disables our critical thinking. And finally, remember this, only a few men actually killed the camel, but the entire society was destroyed because their silent complicity in a crime invited collective disaster.
So I want to leave you with this really provocative thought to ponder. Today, we are completely obsessed with building our own versions of Iram of the Pillars, our massive skyscrapers, our sprawling digital empires, our unmatched technologies. But this source material reminds us that civilizations rise and they inevitably fall. The true test isn't how tall our buildings are, but whether we leave behind a legacy of justice or just another silent monument to human arrogance. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what you build.